exemplary of how they have worked really hard to connect with all of the local farmers, and they bring that product into the co-op. And we have great communication, so the buyer will call and say, starting next week, we're going to be getting strawberries from Terra Firma Farms for, perhaps the next 12 weeks. So we can then roll back our purchasing and make sure that we're buying according to what we think our needs are. And then at the end of the season, their buyer will say, Terra Firma's about to end on strawberries, we're going to have to come back to you guys for berries. And as long as there's this trust and transparency that makes it work. There's no, as long as we're open with each other and we know what's going on, we can respond and react.
And I think that an important point there, as I say this from kind of a grower side, is that as a grower, I just want options. I want options, and if I've got a big crop coming in, which we're pretty smaller in the sense of food production, or we have 7 acres in production right now. We want to be able to sell to a co-op. We want to have that mechanism in our community and know that they're doing right by us. We also want to develop our own capacity to sell food directly, and then know that there's options like Veritable that we can go to too, but there's integrity along that whole line. And I think it's important to mention that some growers are more comfortable at any one of those points. Some don't want to do their own marketing, but historically, when growers have turned over that function to somebody else, and then all of that value has been lost in terms of identity, it's done a major disservice to our agricultural industry and to the viability of the small farms. So we're talking about different strategies to bring that source identity, that integrity, that knowledge and relationships back into the system. Dynamic components.
And diversity is a really important part of any business model, so that's what we're talking about here. Sean diversifies who we sell to, we diversify who we sell to and who we buy from, and that's what makes it work.
And I think that if we feel like if we run on competition against each other, then who wins? I feel like as a small grower, I wouldn't win. And so I feel like, if you realize when we started this, go back to the times and dates, it's in the 70s. And so there is a mentality that we all began on. And I think that is a difference, that's something to keep in mind. And that I think that integrity in relationship and keeping, it's not good for farms to die for Veritable or for SAC Co-op. And so we all market, diverse marketing. When SAC doesn't take all my peaches, I'll call Veritable and say, hey, I need help. And because we have this relationship, they will do what they can. Price might not be the same, but for me, I want to sell them, instead of composting them or whatever. So I think that there's a lot of depth here that it is maybe harder to understand, but competition, even for us growers in the Cape Bay Valley, there's a lot of us that if we work on competition, then there's going to be less growers to support each other spiritually, mentally, physically, all aspects of life beyond the business. And that's what we're doing. That's what makes it worth living and working as hard as we do, knowing that I can call Drew or another farm and say, hey, help, or whatever, on whatever level you need.
It seems like a lot of how this, your entities, the four of you work together has evolved over a long period of time with a lot of trust. But I'd like to throw this out maybe as a question to the audience. Do you think that a lot of the discussion this morning is around new hubs, new ideas, emerging supply chains? Do you think that this kind of a relationship can be replicated in what's happening in newer ideas out in the rest of this country and the state?
Yeah, why not? There's no reason why it wouldn't be able to be replicated. It's unique that you've started from an early time, but it's a business model that fits other areas of the country also, and other parts of the state. It's not. There's no reason you know, that there's, most distributors don't demand some exclusivity of their grower, so, that I know of.
I think it's done every day. It exists throughout the state.
Anyone? Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, it's the lady behind you and then you.
Thanks. I love it. I'm from the Central Valley, and the nascent or non-existent hubs or ability to do what you have done over the years, there's a real differential. I mean, we look at that exportation of all the food in the world. So really kind of going back to the original discussion this morning, I'm looking at FAIR, I'm looking at the diversity of the growers in the valley and their access to the kind of situation that you're talking about here. So I'm really looking at policy and systems work so that it can be replicated in a way that is really functional, because I really loved your talking about everybody having access and finding ways that all people can have access to really good food. And yet there seems to be differentials between systems in the Bay Area and Los Angeles or San Diego. And so I guess that's my question is, do you have interest in expanding and making what you have done more available, or the information about how you've done it more available to the Central Valley, for instance? Or is it just private? I mean, I guess I'm really looking at, is this a private club?
Yeah.
Or
I actually would love to kind of address that from both the co-op and Soilborne, because, and this is, and I think this might be helpful, I'd love to read this to you, but there's one thing that we had a little story. So halfway through my time, well, yeah, a little bit, maybe 8 or 9 years into my time at the co-op, and I worked very hard and in tandem with our produce manager to really, support the growers. I'd had the opportunity to go and meet a lot of the farmers that we were buying from. And, at the same time, we're an organization that's going through board of directors changes, store manager changes, and we just, in fact, at the Sacramento Natural Foods Co-op, we've had probably, I think, 6 or 7 different store managers in probably the last, 11 or 12 years. And that was really tough because everybody comes in with different attitudes. So, at one particular time, it was really the produce manager and myself that had the passion and the love, and they brought in a new general manager to expand our store, take us in new directions, and the first thing on the agenda was, it's just too hard to buy from small farmers, so let's just go with one distributor. And that was a crushing, basically it happened. So, and at that point, the produce manager that had, really cared about it was gone, and another more conventional produce manager came in and really overnight called a number of our growers that we had long-standing, they had been providing the co-op with food for, close to 20 years, suddenly just found out one day later, we're not buying from you anymore. Well, lots went on in between there, but basically at a certain point, when another Paul actually came in, and I had learned a really harsh lesson, and what we did is we created, we made a mission statement for our interactions in the world of fresh produce. And if I could, it's just a quick paragraph, but I think it'll give you an idea where we're coming from. So, yeah, we would share this information in our way any chance that we get. And then the same thing with Soilborne. Everything that we're doing, we're looking at it like we want to model and inspire something that's working, but we're focusing on doing in our own community and doing it well, and would happily share and invite people to come. And that's something that we're constantly thinking about in our work. But So maybe this is what guides us at the co-op, and it's been helpful through management changes because we're able to go, hey, we agreed to this, and so it says